Good Sunday morning, everybody. Most of us, at the mention of Albert Einstein's name, think about the theory of relativity and how it is the underpinning for a lot of the ways that we understand the physical world around us. We sometimes forget that Albert Einstein thought about a lot of other things as well. For example, he is famously known for saying that a man who is driving a car and kissing a pretty girl at the same time isn't devoting the kind of attention that the kiss deserves. He also has said that that everyone is a genius, but if you tell a fish that it is stupid because it can't climb a tree, it will live the rest of its life believing that it is stupid. All of that is a roundabout way of introducing today's guest. He's Joel Pelcyger. He is the founder,
yes,
and we don't call you a headmaster anymore.
Head of school.
Head of school for PS1, which is Pluralistic School 1.
Yes.
It's in Santa Monica, and we will tell you in full disclosure that one of our guests earlier this year was sitting here during the breaks and just raving about this school. And we thought, we usually have someone from a private school in every year around this time to talk about the alternatives to a public school education. And PS1 has been around for 40 years?
40 years.
40 years. But you, the reason I was quoting Einstein is because I was going to quote you. You have said that it's not how smart you are, but how you are smart. That opens up a whole new world.
Well, as did Einstein and what he said.
Yeah, especially the one about the pretty girl and driving.
That's right.
But what kind of an education is a child going to get at PS1 that's different from the education they would get from one of our public schools?
Well, I think of it as not just different from public schools, but really from other schools. And I think we start from a different premise. We're not in the business of trying to measure children against one another, that some succeed and some don't, that there's a system to be, or a game to be played, and those who play it well succeed and those who don't. But rather to say that fitting in really is about being yourself. And if you're going to honor what's within each person, cherish, value, admire, recognize what lies within each of us and prize us for what that might be, then you get to lead a fulfilled, successful life because people care about you, and you in turn care about others because that's the environment that you're growing up in.
My recollection when I was a kid, one did not have to go to kindergarten, so I started in the first grade.
Okay.
But my recollection of those years in primary school, as we refer to it, was that there was a lot of pressure to fit a mold.
Yes.
And the impression that I get from looking at your website, and we'll have the address a little bit later, is that children are encouraged to be themselves?
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think that usually what happens is everybody wants to fit in one way or another. And whatever that environment is, you learn what the rules are and you play it successfully or not. Yeah. But if the rules of the game are that you think of yourself as being a worthwhile being and that you can look to others in that way, and that, well, if you think about it in terms of academic subjects, somebody else worth quoting, I think, is Will Rogers, who said, everybody is ignorant only in different subjects.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's that same basic tenet.
How did you come up with the name Pluralistic School? And I'm not quite sure how pluralistic applies in this sense.
Pluralistic basically means diversity, recognizing the differences that exist in all of us, cherishing those differences, valuing those differences. So whether we're talking about socioeconomic differences, whether we're talking about racial, ethnic differences, and any way that you might look at things in terms of learning differences, that kids learn in different kinds of ways. We knew that instinctually, but schools weren't organized in that way. Brain research over the last 30, 35 years clearly has shown that we learn at different rates, different ways, different times in our life. So rather than fitting a child into a program, fit programs around children. And again, when I talked about, mentioned about everybody having a story, a child or an adult or whatever, that that level of recognition again and acknowledgement and prizing you for who you are. Something I require of my teachers a month into the school year is to write to themselves and to me what they value, cherish, and admire in every student. And that's the starting point. So it's not how do we fix this child, what are the problems that they're having. It's interesting. Today, when I first came in here, I was talking to your director of security who right away showed me his 8-week-old grandchild. Earlier today, I was spending time with some friends who have a 6-month-old grandchild. And you look at them and you look at them interacting with that person, and they're not thinking about what the problems are that they have, what is it that they have to fix. They're just in awe, the awe and respect that they have for them. Well, our belief is that when you're beginning your formal educational experience, you should have that same, people should look at you in that same way.
So let's begin at kindergarten. How many children are in a typical kindergarten class at PS1?
Typical is not always a word that we can use. Really, we are a kindergarten through 6th grade equivalent program because we have a 2-year age range in all of our classes. So we'll have a kindergarten and 1st grade equivalent class, we'll have a 1st and 2nd grade equivalent class, 2nd, 3rd, 3rd, 4th, and so on.
And this is based upon the what would we call it, the development or the sophistication, developing sophistication of the children?
No, not at all. There are schools that do this as well, and what they tend to do, say, is if you have a 1st, 2nd classroom and a 2nd, 3rd grade classroom, you'll have the more capable 2nd graders with the 3rd graders and the less capable 2nd graders with the 1st graders. That's not what we do. We make sure through a child's full PS1 experience, they will have opportunities to be king or queen of the mountain, and they'll have opportunities where they're reaching for their best selves. They'll have times when they're the youngest or younger, on the younger side within their class, and sometimes older. And we break up those peer groups because kids think about themselves in the context of others that they're with. So one of the jobs that I have is to make sure that the school stays small enough so that I know every child and can get input from the parents and teachers about class placement. And I actually have an Excel spreadsheet to show me where children have been each year so that I can change who they're with in any given year. They get to know many more people that way. Because what tends to happen in larger environments or more impersonal environments is that a child kind of groups themselves with somebody just like themselves. So there's a little clique of 2 or 3 people that they're together with, rather than having this other kind of exposure where they know about a lot of different people and they feel themselves in these different positions, which teaches them empathy.
Very interesting way of approaching this. So back to my original question. If I walk into a classroom, how many kids am I typically going to see in there?
Okay, so we have 2 lead teachers in every classroom, and we have 21 kids in each kindergarten and 1st grade equivalent class, and when it gets older than that, we have 25.
Okay.
About.
So you've got 25 little spirits, 25 personalities, 20, whatever it may be. How do you corral those into a cohesive group, which is necessary to maintain order in the classroom, but at the same time let all of those children bloom and flower and be their innate, their normal selves?
It's harder to create than to sustain, because once it's created, it's much more self-sustaining. And really what you're trying to do is speak with everyone. When I tell a teacher if they have 2 kids and 25 students in their class, really there's 27 teachers in that classroom. There's things that there's something that every single person knows in that classroom that they know more than anyone else, including the adults that are there. So the issue of control that exists in so many places really exists because kids have no place. They don't know what to do with their energy. They're being told to act in only a certain kind of way. Well, at that point, you just build up resistance and often can act that out. If instead you're setting yourself up in a more cohesive environment that just says, I care about you, I care about you, I care about you, we have to all learn together. What are the best ways for us to do that? And you can start with a conversation. And you make rules with the kids. And what happens, because there's 2 teachers in a classroom, they're modeling that same kind of collaboration that you want the kids to model, because it's not one teacher.
And those discussions are based on the child's level. You would talk differently or have a different discussion with a 5 or 6-year-old than you would with one who's 8 or 9?
Not as different as you think. I think that's where that awe and respect piece comes in. Over the last 40 years, I've had very similar conversations with 5-year-olds that I do with adults. I mean, yes, you have to adjust it to a certain extent, and you don't want to use the same words all the time, but children rise up to the level of respect with which you give them.
Well, it seems as though, I think, sometimes that gets beaten out of kids, not maybe literally, but kids are taught to not be that way, to be simple.
Right, and what happens for us when our kids go on field trips and the docents all over say to us, your kids are different from everybody else. They ask the best questions. They're most curious about what's going on. They care about this. They want to know more than most people do. How did that happen?
We'll explore this more when we come back after these messages. Stay with us, please. For more information about PS1, we urge you to go to PS1's site. It is www.ps1.org, Pluralistic School 1. All sorts of photographs, all sorts of information about the school, and that'll give you the opportunity to make further contact with PS1. We'll repeat this when we come back after these messages. This is Midday Sunday. Our guest today is Joel Pelcyger. He is the founder of Pluralistic School 1 in Santa Monica, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. As so frequently happens during the break, we have interesting conversations that are way beyond what we plan. Not that we plan anything because here, but how do you make education relevant today with these kids who so often they've grown up with electronic devices in their hands and maybe not the same kind of physical contact with each other and with the world that some of us more mature folks have had?
Well, when you think about more mature folks, people much younger than I had the same kind of experience I think that I did, which is that we grew up in an experience-rich, information-poor world. And the world that kids grow up in now is exactly the opposite. It tends to be information-rich and experience-poor. So what we used to ask schools to do, or what we still ask schools, what most people still ask schools to do, is to help impart knowledge to a child. Well, the internet does that. Once you learn how to read and you learn how to access a computer, you can be more knowledgeable than any teacher on any subject that you want, really. So that role for teachers is not so much the important one anymore. So we have to think of new reasons, how do you make the school relevant? And I think that the reason that computers are not enough is that life is about relationships and interaction and connection. So when we talk about our school, we say that our 3 core values are competence, confidence, and connection. So there's the competence piece. It's what you know, you've got to learn, and that's what we go to school for. But there's how you feel about what you know, which is the confidence piece. And then the connection piece is what's so relevant in our lives. And the traditional response to how to make schools work for children is to emphasize only that competence piece and to say there's a very limited number of kinds of information that's important. Let's take a standardized test, learn how to take a test, learn how to do well. Cheat if you have to, because that's what has been proven up, down, and sideways. That's happened with individual teachers who are being measured by their success, kids to try to succeed, schools in order not to be taken over. And I just read a book called Freakonomics 3 days ago, and it writes a lot about that. And so the idea of relevance is I have a story, you have a story, what's yours? How can I build on what you are already interested in? And help expand that. How can I help you share what you know with somebody else? That's the connection that gets, as an example, that you do on a daily basis in school that carries over to life.
But as I listen to you, I can't help but think about people that I know who have talked about how they want their children to succeed no matter what. Whether it's redshirting the child or
Yes.
figuring out a way to sneak notes to them
Yeah,
so that
right.
they can get through a test.
Right.
They want their child to succeed at all costs. That would seem to come into conflict with some of your approach to educating children.
I think that's very short-sighted. I respectfully think that that's very short-sighted. I think that you can think in terms, I can think in terms of 3 levels of growing up. The first level is engagement. The second level is performance and achievement. And the third level is success and fulfillment. If you try to emphasize too much that performance level, you're not getting that level of engagement that you need, that connection. And that's what I think is the importance of elementary education. Mm-hmm. So I don't think of myself as, a grandiose kind of educator. I think of myself as somebody with 40 plus years of experience starting and running an elementary school. And that elementary school key is about engagement. You try to emphasize performance too much. You get to where I got to in my first grade classroom, where I had a stomachache every day and I spent a lot of time in the nurse's office. And then I learned to achieve, and I achieved very well, but at what cost?
How well do these kids make the adjustment to middle school or high school?
They make it very well because they know what they know and they know what they don't know. And they're engaged in learning, and they develop critical thinking skills. And they are the ones who raise their hand in the classroom, whatever school they go to, and they say, I like how you explained that, but I didn't quite get it. Can you explain that in a different way? Can you come at it in a different, because that's what their whole educational process has been. There's no single way to be defining things.
So your school sounds so idealistic, so wonderful, so promising. Again, from my background, I can't help but wonder, do you ever have times when a couple kids get together and have a fight in the schoolyard? Kids will be kids.
Kids will be kids. I mean, conflict. There is conflict. You don't want a perfect environment. One of the skills that you want to impart to kids is how to resolve conflict. How do you work through the problems that you have? Well, we don't do that in a formulaic way, but we do that based on that level of respect, again, that you start with. So that, when you have 200 people interacting with each other on a daily basis, there can be conflict. But how do you handle that conflict? How much can you learn to understand and appreciate what somebody else is saying? Basically, most conflicts are miscommunications. So if you step back from that communication, to have a chance to talk with one another about it, and we can create that kind of environment for kids, then you help them get past something.
How closely bonded, how closely connected do these kids become? I'm wondering if the connections that kids make at PS1 go beyond elementary school.
Absolutely. The lifelong friends that they make, which I've been able to see now, and the connections they make. We just had our 40th anniversary celebration. We had more than 1,000 people that came to it for a small elementary school, and for people to come back to their elementary school in that way from the 70s, 80s, 90s, first decade of this century, and to be together and because they still care about each other and they're communicating with one another. It clearly happens on a high school level. Our kids go to so many different kinds of schools because, again, kids learn in all these different ways. So when you're getting to that next stage of where performance and achievement is that much more important, that's where we help parents and children find the next best school for their child, whatever that might be, from the most traditional to most progressive.
And I would imagine the parents are required to be involved.
Parents are required, not in a co-op sense, because it's all done voluntarily, but we absolutely say to parents when they first inquire about the school and come on a tour of the school, if you don't see yourselves as partners in education, this school's not going to serve your needs. It's not just kids who develop that lifelong friendship, but the parents do. And there's that closeness, and there's so many things the parents are doing to help change the life of their child and their friends, because the school is a community. The school's a school for children. It's a community for families and staff, and for all of us to be working together.
Is it a haven for middle class or upper middle class folks? Because it cannot be inexpensive to send a child to PS1.
It's not inexpensive, but it's not inexpensive. It costs a large amount of money, and we don't get any government subsidy of any kind.
Give us a sense.
Tuition next year is $24,000 for elementary school.
For 1 year.
For 1 year.
That's more money than a lot of people watching us today are making.
And there are people who don't pay more than $35 a year to go to the school. Part of pluralism is to learn about people different from yourself. And so without placing any kind of value judgment on that, the way that it works out for us is 16% of tuition goes towards financial aid, because what we're trying to do is to create a responsible community that, to a certain extent, I mean, it can't be exactly reflecting all of society, but clearly those who can help support those who can't. And I would never have started a school that didn't do that.
And parents, those who are well off, those who are able to afford, they're okay with that?
They have to be, because we're very upfront with who we are and what we believe in.
You must have a tremendous sense of satisfaction, either at the end of the day or at the end of the school year.
I do. I'm a pretty compulsive person, though, and so I'm always driving myself to do better. But and you're never quite there. I mean, it's a very vibrant, dynamic. It's not a static kind of place. So there's always more to be doing. But yes, I feel very fortunate. I feel very fortunate to have found my work as early as I did. And again, to start that school when I was 24 years old.
And we'll do the math here. It's 24 plus 4. Never mind. We won't worry about that. Let's take one more break. We'll be right back.
Thank you.